Hi, I'm Jim Weaver. I'm the Executive Director of the Organ Historical Society. I'm sitting here on this bench with Nathan Laube, who's about to play this organ by the Skinner Company, made here for the Rockefeller Chapel at University of Chicago, I think in 1925?
27, 28, yeah.
Nathan grew up in this city, and this organ speaks to him in many very special ways because of his youthful opportunity to be here. I'm here for this event because I'm committed, along with members of the OHS, to celebrating pipe organs, the people who make them, and for my part, the wonderful handmade qualities of instruments of this sort and of those which have been made for hundreds of years. And I know that you have a great interest in the broad history of pipe organs.
Absolutely. And in many ways that began here in this chapel in some ways. I grew up about an hour from here, and I believe I must have been 5 or 6 years old when I first heard this organ. Wolfgang Rupsam, who just played for us last night at the OHS convention, played an all-Bach recital here. And I had just been with my family, my brother and my parents, over to the Museum of Science and Industry. And after having a great day there, we decided to come and just walk around the chapel, and just happened to run into this concert. And came in, I remember sitting up there in the balcony and watching everything he was doing. I was absolutely captivated. So some of my earliest organ memories involve this space and this Skinner organ, of course pre-Reconstruction. So in many ways it's a very beautiful, and on a personal note, it's a very beautiful thing for me to be here now, having seen this organ completely reworked, in beautiful condition, so easy to play, and of course so beautiful to listen to. And beyond that, at the moment, of course, living in Europe, I'm currently a student at the Musikhochschule in Stuttgart, and also at the American Cathedral in Paris. And in these last 2 years that I've been living abroad, naturally, the most exciting thing, I think, just on a general note for organists, is the fact that we can sort of go back in time by visiting and by getting to know these historic instruments. This being relatively young, all things considered, 1927, 1928. But having this time in Europe, for example, to travel all the time and visit organs, from organs that are 450 years old, 50 years old this year, or even those from just the 20th century, this has been something that has absolutely changed my entire understanding of the instrument and the entire way I approach the instrument. And to be here for the Organ Historical Society National Convention, and to be able to share that love of these incredible living and relevant and beautiful and important instruments that connect us with different times, that connect us to different traditions of playing, that can really transport us to a different time, is very, very, very beautiful to me, and incredibly meaningful. And to have the opportunity to play a program such as this, really tailored to this organ, certainly music that if Widor had come to the United States to play a concert tour, I'm sure if there's any piece he would have played on a Skinner organ with its orchestral wealth, it'd be his most orchestral piece, the Allegro Vivace from the Symphony No. 5.
We're going to hear that tonight.
That's right. Yeah, it's the first opening piece. Or Mendelssohn's Variations, a very interesting piece. Sort of Mendelssohn, of course, being this fascinating composer sandwiched between the classical and romantic idioms. I'm going to first play the third sonata of Felix Mendelssohn, a work that's in many ways his most conservative. Its use of fugues and chorales, and very contrapuntally, very intricate work. And to juxtapose the sort of plano sounds of the organ, the more classical core of the Skinner organ, we're going to hear the Mendelssohn Variations Sérieuses, a work that perhaps, had he lived a little longer, had he come to see the organs of Eberhard Friedrich Walker, if he had come to see the organs of Cavaillé-Coll. For example, Cavaillé-Coll's first organ at Saint-Denis was installed the same year that he wrote this piece, 1841. I wonder if Mendelssohn had lived a little longer, and had he seen the birth of the romantic organ, perhaps would he have written something for the organ along the lines of his piano work, the Variations Sérieuses. In the second half of the program, we're going to hear Fantasy by Camille Saint-Saëns, the beautiful and unfortunately rather underplayed Fantasy in D-flat, a work of incredible poetic potential and just exquisite on this organ. In many ways, when I started registering this here, I thought, this is the work that's the most idiomatically suited to this instrument. the beautiful string colors, the rippling flute sounds, the rigor of the tutti in the middle. After that, two works somewhat dealing with the idea of departing and death. The Funérailles of Franz Liszt, again using the organ in perhaps the most idiosyncratic way, using the chamade in the back gallery, sort of the most visceral effects, and of course the whole tutti with the tuba coupled in for the sort of hammer blow chords in the end, but also the beautiful flutes establishing a sense of stillness with just the English horn stops and these sort of things. Following that, we'll have two settings of O Welt, ich muss dich lassen of Brahms, just on the beautiful somber diapason colors. And then finally, the Academic Festival Overture, using the organ, again, in a very idiomatic but very orchestral way, truly trying to emulate the sounds of the symphony orchestra, which on an organ of this magnitude and of the scale and of this sort of poetic voicing is very both enjoyable to do. Certainly takes a lot of time to conceptualize that registrational scheme, but ultimately very, very rewarding, and that can really give the illusion that you're listening to this great work in a concert hall. So the opportunity to play on this organ in this space and for such an extraordinary audience is something that I'm incredibly looking forward to and very honored to be able to do.
I want to ask you a question about your work. You know, we're in a time right now of the Olympics in England, right. Wimbledon tennis matches. But as I've watched you doing some preparation for this event, I'm aware that you are quite an athletic person. I mean, I'm always amazed by what the human body can do.
That's right.
If you think about it. And you're working with quite a different muscle group.
That's right.
Than many of the athletes that we have been celebrating in recent times. But in fact, your approach is quite both extremely athletic on one hand and extremely economical at the same time. And I think it'd be interesting to ask you, if you don't mind,
certainly,
something about what you think about playing the instrument. You know, you're a very young performer, and yet your performance comes across as someone who has a great deal of musical depth and integrity, but with this incredible skill. It's a marvelous combination.
Well, I think when I think back on my musical life, even just thinking about, let's say from when I was about 6 years old when I came here, that's about when I started playing the piano. And naturally, the piano has always been a big part of who I am as a musician, which is evidenced by the two piano works that are on the program, the Mendelssohn Variations Sérieuses, the Liszt Funérailles. This is a part of a core of the repertoire that I absolutely adore. And naturally, a lot of the music that's on this program also is music that was written in a period where the lines were a bit blurred between the piano and the organ. And therefore, of course, we never apply a pianistic technique just point blank to the organ, because that doesn't work. But understanding certain principles about how they played the piano at that time, of course, is very informing. But I think indeed, what you mentioned, the economy of motion is very, very important, and of course, what it is really, it's just an incredible amount of strength and control that you have to harness in order to do things that are very, very subtle.
Yes.
I suppose it's a bit like an athlete in that way. But I think over the course of the last 7 years, I spent 5 years, of course, in Philadelphia, which is where I developed this love of the art of transcription, having been an assistant at the Wanamaker organ. I'd never really, I mean, my earliest acquaintance with the pipe organ was actually through a set of Harmonia Mundi CDs called Les Orgues Historiques, and it was the Isnar in Saint-Maximin, it was the Andreas Silbermann organs in Alsace, it was Schnittger organs in North Germany, etc., etc., organs in Italy. It was all old 16th, 17th, and 18th century instruments. And in fact, when I first came to Curtis in Philadelphia to begin studying and was surrounded by the symphonic organ, this was really my introduction to this art of orchestral playing, which is very much alive in Philadelphia with the Wanamaker organ as its sort of epicenter. And that's where I first developed this interest, because naturally, I mean, when you're living in a city for that long, it would be just stupid to say, well, I don't like this, I'm not going to do it. So I wasn't sold at first, but the more I began doing it, the more I realized how beautiful and liberating that can be to treat the organ or to have the opportunity to, in addition to all the beautiful repertoire we love to play, to have this other outlet where you can really explore some of the truly orchestral potential of these instruments, which clearly Mr. Skinner had in mind. These four-rank orchestral string stops that evoke the character of orchestral strings, the French horn, the English horn, these stops like Heckelphone that is so poetic and beautiful. And then having had that experience, I realized, okay, well, this is great, but it's also very, I mean, you have to have, I think we live in a time where you have to be a complete musician. And I think as a touring recitalist, the greatest beauty of playing so many recitals is that, of course, you never have two of the same organ. So you're always reinventing the wheel. I think that's also something that's very, very beautiful for organists, to come to a new instrument and to rethink things and to have that interesting inner dialogue of consulting a background in performance practice, consulting the instrument at hand, thinking about all of these different influences that shape someone as a musician, and then coming to the best decisions about the way to proceed in choosing the registration, in finding the appropriate tempo for a room, and listening to the space, and trying to do all that. And certainly the time that I spent in France was incredibly revelatory in that way, practicing on cavaille-colle organs in the middle of the night, playing in these beautiful, enormous spaces, playing in England, and now, of course, the same in Germany, playing a lot of historic organs and specifically early music. So this is coming back here, of course, to my hometown, and sort of being in my own stomping grounds, and coming to an organ like this. It's actually very interesting because, of course, I haven't played an electric action organ in about 4 months.
And so this was a different experience.
And yes, and this organ, of course, has quite a big delay, and you have to really adjust a lot of things to that. And in fact, on this organ, you have to use quite a lot more physical movement than you have to on some other organs, just to make sure you feel really grounded into the chords. And this is, of course, what takes so much time, and why, for example, yesterday I was here for 16 hours. And not only, of course, conceptualizing the registration and the sort of color palette from which you're going to draw, and how each individual piece will reserve certain things so that you never come to the same tutti twice, and drawing different colors and different, sort of drawing from a different color palette in every work. But also actually just physically coming to terms with the organ, and practicing the choreography of doing what you have to do. The Brahms Academic Festival Overture, of course, you're constantly hitting pistons and moving swell boxes to try to create this orchestral tapestry of sound, and that requires an enormous amount of preparation, much more than I would love to have much more, but although
you're incredibly generous to give us this time.
Oh, I'm delighted.
You have to play this demanding concert. I want to thank you.
My pleasure.
And I know that it's going to be a wonderful experience for our audience.
Well, I hope so.
To see and hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Jim Weaver, Executive Director of the Organ Historical Society. So pleased to have you with us tonight. I'm making an address to the people who are also not with us in this room tonight. A welcome to OHS members and friends in Chicago and around the world. Many of you see and hear this performance on the internet. For the first time ever, OHS presents a key recital of a week-long convention to our members and friends who cannot be sitting here in this beautiful room tonight. The internet is increasingly important for all of us and is central to the lives of the younger generations. I'm excited that this superb organist, Nathan Laube, is enthusiastic about this live broadcast of his recital. Here tonight, we link the power, the beauty of the music that so touches our lives to the majesty of an age-old, handmade treasure, the pipe organ. I greet you on behalf of OHS President Scott Huntington and members of our National Council, Dennis Northway, Chair of our Chicago Convention, and members of the Planning Committee. We thank Karen McFarland Artists Management for support of this special venture, and especially Kevin Gross, an OHS member who brought this idea of internet broadcast to us, whose enthusiasm brings us to this moment. He provides technical assistance together with the University of Chicago creative team. Those listening can download this program from the webpage, and a recording of this live performance will be available on the OHS website in coming weeks. A reminder, please check your cell phones and other things that go bump in the night. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of the pipe organ and its music, please join me in welcoming Nathan Laube.
what a pleasure it is and an honor to have the opportunity to play this magnificent organ for such an amazing group of people and for an extraordinary institution, the Organ Historical Society. Just beyond the fact that we all here gather together to celebrate historic pipe organs, this one being relatively young, all things considered, I'll share with you a little bit of my own history with this own organ, this organ here at Rockefeller Chapel. Of course, growing up in Chicago, there are a few sort of pilgrimage organs that one hears about from a very early time. And naturally, the Skinner organ here and the Skinner organ in St. Luke's, Evanston were always the two organs in the city that were on my radar. And I'll never forget, perhaps when I was 5 or 6 years old, having told my parents that I loved the pipe organ, coming here after a day at the Museum of Science and Industry to hear Wolfgang Rubsam play an Albach recital. I must have been 6, must have been about then. I just started playing the piano. And this left such an impression on me that always as I thought about my life in Chicago, somehow it was always sort of geared towards this building and this magnificent Skinner organ. So it's, in a very personal way, also a very wonderful event for me to be here to explore this organ and to share it with you. We've just heard one of the great works of the French symphonic school, of course, the Allegro Vivace from Symphony No. 5 of Charles-Marie Widor, exploring the organ in a symphonic way, not necessarily orchestral, which is yet to come, but still treating the organ as an organ. Later with Brahms, of course, we're going to truly treat this organ as an orchestra. But now we're going to look at this organ through a more classical lens in the music of Felix Mendelssohn. Naturally, it's always very interesting to see, even on a romantic organ, what the classical core of the organ sounds like. So I'm going to play back-to-back without pause 2 works of Felix Mendelssohn, the Third Sonata in A major, perhaps the most conservative and therefore the most perfectly suited to such a more classical treatment, hearing the beautiful plano registrations of the organ. And then one that again will branch into the symphonic in the Variations Sérieuses, his great 17 D minor piano variations for the piano. So I hope you enjoy these 2 works of Felix Mendelssohn, the Third Sonata and the Variations Sérieuses. So in the second half of the program, I'm going to first invert the two pieces. We're going to begin with the Fantasy in D-flat of Saint-Saëns, and afterwards have the Funérailles of Franz Liszt. The reason for this is as in the first half of the program, we're going to begin with a sort of set of a fantasy piece from the 19th century French symphonic tradition, in this case Saint-Saëns. And after that, we're going to have two works that seem to concern themselves on the topic of death and departing. The Funérailles, of course, the funeral, and the two settings of O Welt, ich muss dich lassen of Johannes Brahms, the last work he ever wrote. And what's fascinating is to see how these two different composers, Franz Liszt and Johannes Brahms, take something entirely different out of this similar topic. One dealing with the sort of drama and the power of parting, and the other in the sort of calm tranquility and peacefulness of it. And then after that, I encourage you to enjoy the Academic Festival Overture of Brahms, which of course couldn't be more suited to such an environment here at the University of Chicago. This will be the premiere of this transcription that I've just completed. And after that, I know that there's been a loose leaf that has been circulated that everybody should have with the correct verses for Gaudiamus Igitur, which we'll all sing together. And the way that that's going to work, unfortunately in the hymnlet that you don't have all the verses. So the way that's going to work is I'm going to finish the Brahms on a big C major chord, and attacca, we will go right into the hymn, because I can't imagine a better way to set up singing Gaudiamus Igitur than the last several pages of the Academic Festival Overture. And in fact, in the fourth verse of that, I'm going to play what Brahms has written, his own accompaniment to the hymn. So this will be sort of a unique opportunity to actually sing Gaudiamus with Brahms' accompaniment. But first we'll begin with Saint-Saëns, and this entire half, again, if it's possible to do this without applause, that way we can sense this journey through Saint-Saëns and his sort of fantasy-like dreamland in D-flat, followed by the darkness and the drama of Liszt's Funérailles, the calm and tranquility of the two Brahms chorale preludes, and then finally this wonderful, joyous, and festive Academic Festival Overture of Johannes Brahms. Before I play all of these works, so there are a number of people I'd like to thank. First of all, I'd like to thank the entire OHS for being here, for supporting this event, for coming to my hometown to experience all of its magnificent pipe organs and the rich legacy of organ building that is Chicago. Thank you so much to all of the administration of the OHS who have made all this happen with the webcast. Thank you all to you who are watching. Also, thank you so much to, yes. This organ, when I was growing up, this actually requires a little bit of an introduction. This organ, when I was growing up, was in a very, very bad state of repair. And I remember actually once hearing a silent film here and coming up and noticing that there were stops missing and there were holes in the console and all of that. And I was always very saddened by this because, of course, I remember so much of my childhood was wrapped up in the well-being of this instrument. So when I found out that this organ was going to be completely restored and rebuilt, of course, I was naturally delighted to know that we again hear this glorious organ in this wonderful space. So Jeffrey Dexter from the Schantz Organ Company is here and also very active in the OHS. And I'd like to thank Jeffrey as well for allowing us to hear this organ once again and to experience all of its beauty. So thank you again to all of you, and without further ado, here is Saint-Saëns, Liszt, and then two entirely different works of Johannes Brahms.